have a favorable schedule. More on that soon.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
What's up, fellas? How you doing today? So I've got a nice docket of guests again for the 49ers Roundtable for this week. We've got Kevin. I think a ton of you from the spaces are going to get to know him or will know him. We've got Peter Lucas of the Niner Fanatic podcast, and then we've got Bashar, who runs the 49er Minded channel. Real quick, guys, before we start in that order, I'd like to get you guys to share your socials and where people can find you on Twitter or wherever it be.
Yeah. Hey, like Rohan said, I'm Kevin. You can find me on Twitter at SF99er49. I'm usually one of the loudmouths in the spaces. I try to keep the team pretty accountable, but today I'm going to bring some positive energy, and we're going to talk a lot of 49ers tonight.
For sure. My name is Peter Lucas. I'm at Peter Lucas 8 on Twitter. Just like Kevin, I'm in the spaces a lot. I kind of go to a lot of different team spaces, so I'm all over the place. And of course, I have my Niner Fanatic podcast that shows up usually on Wednesdays, 6:30 Pacific time. And it's always on Spotify. You can see it on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, but wherever you go to get it, just get it.
Had to unmute myself. So I'm Bashar, I run the 49er Minded YouTube channel. Easy to find me on social media. Could just go at 49er Minded on Instagram, at 49er Minded on Twitter, and then on Facebook, there's a 49er Minded YouTube Facebook page that you can easily find if you go on Facebook and search it up. I'm probably the most active on the Twitter page, but I'm active on all three without a doubt. And basically, I give out alerts and say, hey. I give my opinions every now and then, but sure, if I got announcements about the show, you'll find them on the Twitter page first, and then I'll put them up on Facebook and Instagram as well. And I had all kinds of guests, and Rohan was one of them. But on Peter's show, Niner Fanatic podcast, I definitely am familiar with the guy Kevin over here. He's got all kinds of opinions and insights, and he's very passionate. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and he's in a great mood today. So awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I can speak for all of these guys. I've watched a bit of Peter's podcast. I know he's had Jamal on there a good amount. Definitely a must watch. The links will be all in the description for the Twitters and Peter's podcast, so be sure to check that out. But guys, the 49ers schedule dropped yesterday, and obviously it was it was expected to be tough, right? 5th in strength of schedule, so you expect, especially with the group of opponents. Now, I'm not a fan of strength schedule, like I said yesterday, but at least when you look at the opponents on paper, there are a good amount of tough ones. But however, looking at how it was structured, I personally feel it's favorable. And I want to get your guys' opinions in a way on how you think, just quick thoughts first to start off on the 49ers schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough schedule. I mean, just granted that we are playing the AFC West and they loaded up this offseason. I think going into it, once we knew we were playing the AFC West, that the schedule was going to be a little bit more difficult than we had originally thought, with Devontae Adams going to the Las Vegas Raiders, Wilson going to the Denver Broncos. Now, we may have an easier matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs because of the departure of Tyreek Hill. But yeah, overall, it's going to be tough. The division games are always tough. Thankfully, Seattle's a little worse than they were in the past. But yeah, I think we'll kind of go over some things. I know the travel kind of towards the back end of the schedule is a little bit easier than it has in the past. So yeah, I think it's going to be difficult, but I think it could be manageable, especially when we expect Trey to be performing this year. If he does perform well, I think we should be okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I looked at it. Like I think we're really blessed to have Trey Lance getting a couple of, I wouldn't say cupcakes because no NFL game is a cupcake, but to have him start off slow in the first couple of games against a kind of a not decimated Seattle team, but Russell Wilsonless. So it's going to be a great opportunity for him to get his feet wet and then of course against the Bears, they really didn't really add too much to their team this season. So, and I think they actually got worse in my opinion. So it's going to be, I'm really excited to see what he can do, get them build up some momentum until he does have to face Russell Wilson in week 3 against Denver. So it's going to be, I'm really excited for the season.
Yeah, I'm not as big as a schedule guy for something weird. I'm like a weird 49er fan in this regard. Like people were texting me and asking me, "Oh, Bashar, aren't you excited about the schedule?" And I was like, man, I hate to be the party pooper, but it never excites me. I just feel like I have this thing in my mind where if our team is built and ready to go ahead and win it all, it doesn't matter what the schedule is going to be. You're just going to be plowing through all the teams, and eventually you'll come out on top. You know, I'm sure you'll have your games that you lose. I get it, but at the end of the day, though, this it does have some significance, though, and especially this year because we're starting off. You know, you basically want to say rookie quarterback because he only played 2.5 games last year. So, yeah, I mean Trey Lance, everybody's excited, but I don't know, not everybody, but there's some people who aren't. But maybe about 10% of the Niner fans out there. But hey, you know, like you guys said, he kind of, you know, we're easing him in a little bit with the Chicago Bears game. You know, obviously, you know, this time it's in Chicago, but the weather should be a little bit better this time around. And it's gonna be interesting. Justin Fields versus Trey Lance. There's gonna be some hype around, even though, you know, Fields last year wasn't looking too hot at times. You know, he had his moments though. And honestly, I think if Fields went to the Niners, you know, that would have been a great move for him. But, you know, that wasn't the case. We got Lance. And, you know, Seahawks, again, you know, that Seattle rivalry. But, again, you guys mentioned no Russell Wilson. But then again, we faced Russell Wilson week 3. And that's a huge test for Trey Lance early on. I mean, and where I might see us losing that game. So we'll see. You know, that later down the road. The one thing honestly made me mad as a fan as far as the schedule goes is that I was really hyped up to go to this Las Vegas game. I don't know if it's going to be a possibility because I hear the tickets are like $400 a pop, and it's on New Year's weekend.
Wow.
What's that?
It's New Year's Eve. That's going to be
it's going to you know, everything, all the prices are going to be jacked up for hotel rooms and who knows flights. So
sure.
Yeah, but I'm just excited about the season in general, about all the players that we got coming up in the mix. So in general, I just got a positive attitude towards it. So bring them on, man. Whoever we play, whatever time, whether we fly back and forth, who cares, man?
I love the attitude. And before we get continue on, we've got some nice regular supporters in the chat. We've got Jesse from Last Second Sports, obviously one of the best in the business when it comes to 49ers.
What up, Jesse?
Check out his channel. We've got Kali, a regular supporter in here. Thank you for tuning in. Dick Nasty says we couldn't have asked for a more perfect schedule. We'll break it down a little more. I don't think it's perfect given the opponents, but it is, in my opinion, a little favorably scheduled in a way. Chris from the Polo Show, thank you for tuning out. Snapple from the Twitter Spaces. I know Bashar and him are pretty close over there. 49ers first takes yesterday. We went on his show, me and Bashar. Be sure to check out that channel over there. Great work there by Aaron. And Kevin's got a little support here, a little fan club because
Jesse.
Jesse's over here with him saying he's his number 1 fan. I'll compete for number 2 then.
I appreciate that, guys. Too many compliments.
What's up, everybody? I know a lot of these people in the chat. So I want to say what's up to all of them. I can't say all the names, but you guys are all awesome. You guys know who you are.
And he also wants
those
guys to be signed, Kevin, at a game this year. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and let's just get into it in a way, right? I think Peter brought it up, and to me, the Chicago game I thought was a very, very favorable way to start because when you talk about rebuilding teams, you normally believe that they're getting better year by year. Chicago was a rebuilding team last year, and somehow they got worse this year. They lost their top receiver in Allen Robinson. They lost their top edge rusher in Khalil Mack. They're aging as a defense. And so to me, they're getting worse. And so I believe Chicago might be in contention to be the worst team in the NFL itself this year. And that is saying something given how they have a promising young quarterback. So that's why I thought this was a very nice way to start. Obviously, your first home game is against Seattle as well. So you'll get the crowd energy as well. It's a division game, so it'll be tougher than it seems. But again, Seattle isn't as good of a team as they were over the past couple of years. Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner are now gone. You know, it's a completely different look of a team. So I think that it is a pretty good start. Kevin, what do you think about the first 2 games of the year?
I mean, I think they're pretty favorable. I'm just looking at Chicago's depth chart right now. They've got some, a few weapons on offense. Nothing that's going to be too threatening, I think, to our defense. Last year we didn't play them very well, but I think that was mainly due to the quarterback play. The defense played pretty well. Like you were saying, I think this is going to be a pretty favorable matchup, and I expect them to win this game. It's going to be a nice game for Trey to come in. I fully expect Kyle to ease Trey Lance into the season if he is indeed the starter. With lots of running the football, we've got three-headed monster with three backs. So I think it's a favorable start, even though it is on the road. Weather's not going to be too much of a factor in September. And then Seattle home. They lost their all-pro quarterback. They do have some decent weapons on offense, but at the same time, who's going to get them the football, right? So again, it's a favorable matchup for us. But so far, the first two games I really like, and I fully expect us to be 2-0, just to start the when we go on the road to Denver when we do play Russell Wilson.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Kevin. Like it's going to be. I think it's going to be a really good game because our defense is going to be there. Our defense is going to show up right away, and I think that me and Ron went on the other day and we kind of went over the depth of this team, and I don't think people are ready for our depth. Our depth is across the board, but especially on the defensive line. I think it's really going to carry us through any kind of rough times with Trey Lance, but I really fully expect him to hit the ground running. I think that Shanahan is really going to be scheming his normal people wide open. And I think we saw a few things about Danny Gray looking really good in the rookie camp. And I think that we saw there was a few videos out today of guys just kind of looking ready to go and like ready to get to work. So I'm really excited about it.
You're talking about the rookie mini camps, huh?
Oh yeah, all day, every day. We watch it every day.
Yeah, the Bears game. We played. Our game was a lot closer last year than it should have been. I think a lot of people can agree with that. It took Deebo to make those two huge plays in that game for us to pretty much win. That's the game that Kyle Shanahan was cussing at Jimmy G on the sidelines, apparently, which was sort of leaked. So, I'm not going to repeat what he said, but we're all excited about this whole Trey Lance thing and how much he can open up the offense for us, and how much Shanahan will call more wild plays down the field. And hopefully we see that against the Bears. Obviously, when we play them, we don't have to worry about Khalil Mack anymore, but they still have Robert Quinn. So, that's not. I don't think it's going to be easy pick. Don't tell me he left. I heard somebody like, he's still in the Bears. Yeah, Robert Quinn.
He's there, but he honestly might get traded apparently, which might make that.
He requested a trade.
No, but cap wise, they might be looking to move on from him.
Okay, he had 18.5 sacks last year. That was a big year for him.
Yeah.
So
did you see they got Brian Edwards? Did you see they got Brian Edwards today?
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that.
The Bears did.
Really?
The Falcons did. That was the Falcons. Yeah. Never mind.
Oh, okay. The Falcons got him. There's so much movement going on. It's just kind of hard to keep up with everything that's happening in the NFL. But yeah, good for the Niners and good for Trey that it's not going to be, we're not playing Tampa Bay week 1, thank God. So Chicago should be a W for us, but we never know what can happen. But man, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to put it. And it seems like it should be a pretty clear-cut 2-0 start. And then after the next two games, we also have two fairly easy opponents in Carolina with a quarterback dilemma right now, and Atlanta, who is on a rebuilding pace in a way. Peter just brought it up. They acquired Brian Edwards today. He probably is a starter for them. But even with Edwards, their receiving core probably is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NFL. They don't necessarily have a solidified option. Lost their number one last year in Russell Gage to free agency to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, we know what happened to Calvin Ridley. So now they are also a team that's pretty weak. I wanted to ask you guys, which kind of stretch in the schedule do you think is the easiest portion for the 49ers? Is it one of those early stretches where they face easier games, or could it potentially be something different?
I mean, the first couple games are probably easiest, but just looking through the schedule, I mean, going to Carolina and Atlanta, granted, those games are on the road, Eastern time zone. You got to look at who we're playing, right? I mean, it's going to be Sam Darnold and Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ritter. The one thing I will say about Carolina is that they have been building a hell of a defense over there with the addition of Derek Brown. I believe that was 2020. And then they've also got Hassan Riddick, and then they have J.C. Horn as the corner they took in the top 10. So, even though their quarterback isn't very good, I think that they can still put pressure on our offense because their defense is very formidable. I mean, they have pass rush, they have coverage as well. So, I mean, it is an easier stretch of the schedule, but it is in the Eastern time zone. And I would say the easier of the two games is Atlanta because I think Carolina could potentially put up a fight because we are on the road and they have a solid defense. So, I mean, from those 4 games, I mean, those are probably the easiest 4 games on the schedule. I would have to take a deeper dive into it. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, towards the end of the season, I mean, we do have at Seattle and then home against the Commanders, and then the New Year's Day game against Las Vegas. I think that's a pretty easy stretch as well. Just considering that I don't think Seattle's going to be very good. Washington could be tough, and the Raiders. But yeah, I mean, overall, our schedule is not easy. But we do have a couple of game stretches where we should see some pretty good runs from the 49ers.
Yeah, I look at, like our division games are always going to be tough. Division games are always going to be tough. And it doesn't matter how good or bad Seattle is. I don't expect it to be a blowout just because it's Seattle. And even with the Rams, like the games that we had with them last season, like, I mean, we had the one blowout win, but towards the end, it was a tight game. We don't know what we're getting from Arizona. Honestly, we don't know what it's going to look like. And then you have to face 4 games of the AFC West. Possibly, I would say possibly just because Seattle fell off. I think that they may be the best division in football right now. And so you just got to look at it. It's going to be, that's like 12. That's 12 games right there. Like, so it's going to be tough sledding. I feel like, thankfully, the other games that we have are kind of not, like I said, no cream puffs in the NFL, but they're a lot easier of games. Carolina, like Kevin was talking about, that they do have a great defense, but their offense is trash. Like, let's just be real. And our defensive line is going to eat. I think that with the depth on this defensive line, I just look for them to eat all season long because there are no great offensive lines in the NFL anymore. You have serviceable offensive lines, but no great pass blocking offensive lines anymore. So I really look towards our defensive line kind of carrying us through a lot of these games.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it simple because I'm looking at this schedule and it's very staggered. I mean, just when you think things may get easy, we're playing, one of our tough division rivals, or just some other really good team out there. But obviously, Kevin said it best. That one stretch where we're playing Carolina and Atlanta. That's pretty much the easiest part because obviously we're dealing with the weaker quarterbacks, and of course you mentioned Carolina's defense. But still, I just see us winning both those games. And if the quarterback doesn't strike any fear in other teams' hearts, I mean, the other team, you just don't really have much of a chance. That's how I look at it. It's a totally quarterback-driven league, and we all know that very well.
One thing I will say about Carolina real quick is they did pick, an offensive lineman in this year's draft. I think their offensive line is getting better. I don't think it's absolute trash like it has been in the past. And quarterback in this league has some sort of protection. They can play well. So I don't want to ignore their offensive line. Granted, the defensive line is the biggest strength of our team, but they have been building over there, and they just so happen to have a quarterback that's not very good. If they did have a very good quarterback, they would probably be a playoff team. So I just don't want them because they have been building an offensive line. They're not trash, on the offense, but just looking at their depth chart, I mean, they've got some horses on the offensive line, and their defensive line, and their defense could be a potential problem. So I don't want to write off that game, but it's a game that I think it's going to be closer than we think, to be completely honest.
That's a fair point, right? The Carolina Panthers have been trying to shore up that offensive line. Iquanu, obviously, they drafted this year, probably slots in immediately as their left tackle. More of a run defender than a pass protector, but he's still good in both ranges. Taylor Moton was their franchise right tackle over there, and they tried to shore it up via free agency as well. Austin Corbett, they signed from the Rams in free agency to, I believe, a 3-year deal. He immediately slots in at guard. Bradley Bozeman from the Ravens immediately slots in at center. So you have some new faces, and by this point, I expect there's to be some cohesion with that offensive line. Obviously, when you talk like Peter said, this offensive line, in my opinion, is probably average, right? Somewhere around the middle in the NFL. But you have a defensive line, obviously, that is amongst the best in the NFL, alongside a quarterback who succumbs under pressure. Obviously, I'm talking about Sam Darnold. We don't know if Corral would be the starter by now, but regardless, it will be somewhat tough. And if the Panthers don't start with Corral early, it does take a bit of an adjustment period. Meaning, if they're trying to start him week 4, 5, 6, he probably isn't necessarily NFL ready at the time that the 49ers play Corral. And so while their offensive weapons are nice, that's obviously the one question. And I think the one team that we've seen year after year struggle without a quarterback, but with a good roster around them, is the Denver Broncos. Pretty solid defense, pretty good weapons, solid offensive line, but have had quarterback issues for year after year after year from 2016 when they drafted Paxton Lynch, and they haven't really been able to do much from it. And so now, obviously, Carolina, that's their one situation. But I wanted to shift it in a way. The 49ers, like, while it's kind of scheduled favorably, there's still some pretty darn tough opponents. We faced the Rams twice, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Cardinals, and then also the Raiders in, I believe, week 17. So I wanted to ask you guys, which game do you think is the hardest game that the 49ers will face this year?
I think Tampa Bay. I'm just, I'm not really too confident about Trey Lance going up against Brady. It's just, with their pedigree, and they won the Super Bowl fairly recently, and I probably, that one definitely stands out for me, at least.
For me, it's probably going to be that Kansas City game because it's kind of late in the season, and you expect later in the season, those injuries, like they might be resting players, like because of the injuries. I just worry about that time of year for them, and it could be for the same for them too. But Kansas City, we really don't know what they are. We know they have a great quarterback, but we don't really know what their offense is going to look like this season. So, but Mahomes always scares me, so I'm going to say Kansas City.
Yeah, those are great picks, guys. I'm going to shift a little bit differently. I'm actually going to say, the Rams in SoFi. And the reason why I say that is because they've been playing us. I mean, if you think about it from last year, we blew them out early in the season, and then they consistently got better against us. They figured out how to stop our run game. Even though Matt Stafford didn't play the best in the last couple games, they were able to beat us. I think the addition of Bobby Wagner, I think they're going to be tough, especially now that they know how to stop a run game. And they have the secondary. They have one of the best corners in football. Division game, it's always going to be tight. But for me, it just with the division, the addition of Bobby Wagner, who knows our system from being in Seattle for over a decade, and then obviously having it be a division game, having them have additions. Now they did lose Von Miller, so I do think if we can potentially pass on them, that might be an easier matchup. But just from the fact that last year, that I'm looking at their depth chart right now, that they consistently played us better throughout the season and went on every time we played them. So they know us really well. We know them really well. And especially, I know that we usually take over that stadium, but that's going to be a really tough game for me going forward.
Yeah, I think all of those are fairly good picks. Bash, you go first before I continue.
It's all good. It's all good. Kevin kind of hit on something. Like, part of me has this fear in me, like the Ram. Sure, we had fun beating up on the Rams, and just pissing them off all these years, but the fact that we lost them that NFC Championship game and then they won the Super Bowl. Who knows? They might have this newfound confidence when they play us, and things won't be the same. Where we have their number like we used to. So that part does worry me quite some time. So,
and think about it. I mean, when we did go on that 6-game winning streak, right? We were running the football. We were averaging at least 5 yards a carry. they couldn't stop our run game. And consistently in the second game at the end of the season when we came back from behind to beat them, and then the NFC Championship game, they were stopping our run. And if you stop our run game, our offense is we haven't had the horsepower into the quarterback position to be able to get over the hump. So if you're going to be able to stop our run, it's going to be very difficult for us to overcome that. Now, with Trey Lance, hopefully that's going to be different because we can play 11-on-11 football. We can run different schemes at them. They may not be expecting that. So that's why I said the Rams, just because they've been consistently getting better against us, the last two matchups.
And I wanted to say something about that. That you hit the nail on the head, like with Bashar, with what you said. The difference is going to be is that Trey Lance is a complete X factor. Nobody knows what it's going to look like, including us. Like we got a taste of it against the Texans, but the reality is we don't know what it's going to look like him coming into this season, like full-time starter, and what wrinkles Kyle's going to draw up with him, how he's gonna face like those division opponents that know us. They, just like you said, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. I think that we're going to see instead of intermediate to short, I think it's going to be long, deep to intermediate. And that's what I see happening. And then because the defenses won't be able to crowd the box, guess what? That running game is right back. They can't stack the box if he's able to throw over the top. So
can I add to that real quick? I think one of the things that we associate with big arm quarterbacks is that they tend to put the ball in danger more. And that's not necessarily true, because when Jimmy Garoppolo was at quarterback, I mean, he was constantly putting the ball in danger. I mean, he was averaging like 2 turnovers against the Rams. Trey Lance doesn't do that. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's very careful. He's actually more conservative, even though he's a big play action guy. He's a guy that throws it down the field. So I think with Trey being able to take care of the ball is actually, like you were saying, Peter, a bigger advantage to be able to throw those deeper routes, those deep intermediate routes. Because he will take it when he feels like he can, and he's not going to force the ball into where, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball, at the goal line, and Jalen Ramsey is intercepting the ball and he throws it in triple coverage. I don't see Trey doing that. So if we're in that same type of situation, you can expect Trey to be more conservative and not take those chances where he knows he's putting the ball in danger, which I feel like going forward through the season is going to give us more possessions, more scoring opportunities. So yeah, Peter, I think you hit that perfectly.
Time of possession too.
Yep.
Like that's going to be a huge thing. I would say that Jimmy, a lot of drives stalled on Jimmy, especially in the middle of games, and I don't think that that's going to be as much of a thing. Even when Trey wasn't playing well against Arizona, drives he extended drives, and even though we didn't score a lot of points, it didn't. We were still in the game against, at the time, the best team in the league at the time.
Yeah,
so it's you just have to take it. I just think Trey is going to give him that X factor that they really need to just keep this offense. It's going to be a whole bunch of wrinkles.
There's a reason that Kyle Shanahan went for it on that many fourth downs in that Arizona game, because Trey Lance consistently got the ball to the opposite side of the field, which was obviously important. You see him go on 4th and 6s even. And so that just shows the confidence not only in a young quarterback, but also the ability of a young quarterback to deliver in those moments. And that was when he was at his rawest that we saw in this entire season. As for my toughest game on the schedule, I think that it comes down to a couple. I like the picks that you had of the Rams and then obviously of the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers game will be pretty tough because while it is going to be a home and home, because we face the Saints, the Dolphins, and then the Bucs all at home at the same time, week after week after week, they're going to be fairly rested. They have their bye week a week after us in week 11. Obviously, it's Tom Brady and company. Pretty strong team on both sides. Projected right now as the number 1 seed in the NFC or NFL in the NFC conference. But to me, I'm just going to go a different route. I'll say the Chargers. And I think the Chargers are one of the most dangerous teams this year. Our one thing that is kind of benefiting us going into that Charger game at home is that we have a bye week, right? I think the Charger game is week 10. We have the bye week in week 9, so we should be rested. However, the Chargers also have their bye week pretty early. They have it in week 8, so it's not like they won't be that rested. They play the Falcons, so they have some steam under themselves. They're probably going to have some momentum coming into our game, and I think they're one of the most dangerous teams in the entirety of the NFL. You have Justin Herbert, a top 5, top 10 quarterback, great weapons with Eckler, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, an improving offensive line. They drafted Zion Johnson for that specific reason, and then a pretty strong defense where you have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa on 2 sides, shored up the interior with Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day, drafted a Tito Ogbonnia as well. You have a pretty strong secondary, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, Derwin James. So it's just a really strong all-around team with a pretty good special teams unit as well. And when we talk about our strength, right, the defense and more specifically the defensive line, I think their offensive line isn't necessarily their strongest point, right? They're still starting guys like Storm Norton probably at right tackle. Matt Filer is going to be their left guard, I believe, this year, or right guard, depends on where Zion Johnson plays. But Justin Herbert is something different when you talk about under pressure. He had 157 dropbacks under pressure last year through, I think it was through half the season, which was in the top 10 or top 12 in the NFL. But when you're looking specifically at off-platform throws, he was 8th in the NFL in off-platform throws. He sat in the top 10 in yards per attempt during those. Passer rating, he's very high up there. Passing, like just all the kind of like metrics favor him and show how good of a quarterback he is under pressure. And I think that only is going to be exemplified, especially if you have it a chance to extend plays, right? Like while cornerbacks are amazing in the NFL, if you extend plays, the offense normally wins. And I think that just the Chargers roster is too overpowering for the 49ers. That's why I slated it as a loss yesterday. And I do think that is probably the most dangerous game and really a huge test right in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And look what they did. I mean, look at what so with the Rams winning the Super Bowl, right? They had a top 10 quarterback. They didn't have necessarily the best run. Had multiple weapons on offense, which the Chargers have. They've done that, right? They addressed their defensive line. They brought somebody else out up to the other side of Joey Bosa, right? So now they have Khalil Mack, and then they realized, you know what, we can't stop the run. So they brought in 2 free agents for the interior. So now if you look at what they did, they've actually done almost identical what the Rams did last year. Because the Rams had 2 bookends. I mean, obviously they have Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive player in the league, but the Chargers have shored up their defensive line, right? And then they also had the Rams had Jalen Ramsey, and the Chargers brought in J.C. Jackson. So you can kind of see that, you know, this is a copycat league, right? So what they've decided to do is, hey, you know what? We need to get, another edge rusher on the other side of Joey Bosa. They brought in Khalil Mack. They shored up the interior defensive line, and then they also brought in a playmaking corner. I mean, and we haven't even mentioned Derwin James yet, right? So what they've done is absolutely, what they've done is incredible. And the Chargers, I mean, just judging their offseason, it's got to be an A, right? I mean, would you guys agree to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one X factor, I would say the one X factor about that game is the coach for San Diego. He lost them a bunch of games a few games last season. And I just don't know. He's known as being an analytics, like just disciple. And that's all he goes off of is analytics.
Yeah, micromanager.
Yeah. And it's not the way to go. You got to go with your gut sometimes. And I just look to, I think that the games against the Chargers are I just look at it as a team that it's always going to be winnable because they're the Chargers. I know that's not the analytical thing to say.
Yeah.
But at the base of it all, I've been watching football for 35 years, and the Chargers are going to Charger. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, but hasn't the roster significantly improved though? I know they have the limitation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I mean, their defense, I mean, it's got to be at least top 5 in the league, right?
For sure.
It's going to be absolutely scary.
Right,
I
the
mean,
pass defense was great last year. It was just the run that really struggled. And you get Khalil Mack opposite of Joey Bosa, so the energy will be there. You also get 2 defensive tackles that were pretty good in run defense, in Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day from the Los Angeles Rams. You draft the position as well, so you're just investing resources in there. So how the 49ers love to talk about depth, they've got 3 pretty solid guys on the interior there over there in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and the sucky part thing, and the reason why I'm scared about this game is, or worried a little bit, Obviously, Herbert had a monster season last year, and again, you guys mentioned. I was going to mention it first, but I'm sure we all feel the same way about these things. So it's no big deal. Whoever says it first, but they got Bosa and Mack, and we're still trying to figure out who we're going to put opposite of Trent Williams. Is it going to be McGlinchey? It's going to be Jalen Moore. And I'm glad that we drafted players now, albeit in the lower rounds, and we signed some undrafted guys. But we still don't know what this offensive line is yet. I mean, and we don't know when they're going to gel at what point in the season. And I don't know, man. Not that I think the offensive line is going to be terrible. I have more hope for it now. But again, there's still that huge unknown. Whereas with them, Bosa, Mack, whoa, that's a tough test right there.
And we're playing a lot of teams that have two very good pass rushers on opposite side of each other. So that's why I've kind of been pounding on Twitter that we need to run the football this year. Not because it's an indictment on Trey Lance. I think it's because it's the strength of our team. And even at points when teams were expecting it, they still couldn't stop it, right? So a game like the Chargers, my game plan would be we got to go in there and run the ball 40, 45 times. Because if it's not Khalil Mack that's going right by McGlinchey, it's going to be Joey Bosa. Right, so it's going to be a very tough matchup, I think, for McGlinchey, unless he significantly improves coming off injury and the offensive line really has figured out how to gel. I mean, I think the game plan, and I'll probably be saying this on Spaces and throughout the season, is we got to be able to run the football because we don't have a solidified right tackle. If we did, I would have a different opinion, but because we don't know what we have in McGlinchey coming off injury, I think that game specifically. But most games this year, our goal is going to be to run the football.
Yeah, and I think that they need to. I come 100%, 1,000% agree with you, Kevin. And the reality is I think that they need to go back to their those wide zone outside the tackle runs and just get it. They have to get it to the boundary. That's where you're going to be able to take advantage of these teams. That's the only way, because I don't think that they're going to be able to, with this offensive line, be able to just run the ball up the gut. I think that's really where we struggled against the Rams towards the end of the season, was they just kept running guys into a wall every single time on early downs, and I just don't think that that's the way. I think with Lance here, having him do those RPOs and having him in play action is going to be, I think that's going to be a huge factor for us also.
Yeah. I had a question about that. Now, you mentioned the outside zones. Ty Davis Price. I like the pick. Not necessarily. I know we kind of reached where we got him. I get that. But in terms of, do I see him as somebody that's going to contribute to the team? Yes, I do. And which is good. We need to pound the ball and run the ball. I get that. But I don't see him as this outside zone guy. And from what I understood, that did they have Trey Sermon slim down and drop some pounds, possibly to change his role a little bit? Or I heard something about him looking quicker or looking a bit more lean. Or
I don't know.
I heard that too.
Sermon's weight, but yeah, you guys know anything about that? I don't know anything about his weight.
I did hear them about them. They wanted him to slim down a little, just to maybe pick up some of his quickness. But I mean, it really, to me, it wasn't about Sermon's quickness. It was really just about his decision making and his dancing in front of holes instead of just. I mean, the zone game is about putting a foot in the ground and cutting up field, and that's what you're supposed to do. He wasn't doing it, and that's why he sat down. That's why Kyle just sat him down, is because even though Elijah Mitchell didn't necessarily pick the right hole every time, he still would at least stick his foot in the ground and just run up field. And that's really, it wasn't a lot of wiggle, wasn't a lot of all that. He was just going to go hit the hole, and I think that's what they like about TDP.
Yeah, TDP does that. I watched him. He does that.
Yeah. I agree. And we heard last year at some point, I forget which week it was. It might have been towards the end of the season where John Lynch was saying that Trey Sermon has to learn how to be a professional running back in the NFL. Like you were saying, you can't dance behind the line of scrimmage unless you're Le'Veon Bell, who, it was a master at that, right? He could find the smallest hole and get through it. But I think that's what he was saying in terms of, being a professional running back. Like you said, stick his foot in the ground and go. And one of the things that Ty Davis Price brings to the team is that he does have a really good 10-yard. So when you put your foot in the ground, you see a hole, you're going. You're going from 0 to 100 very quick. And that's what I love about TDP. And kind of going back to last year's draft too. If you really go back and watch Aaron Banks, and if you study him, he's not an outside zone guy. He's not going to be getting out in space really. he's going to be a guy that's going to be standing up the 3 technique and moving him to the side so TDP can hit that hole very quickly. He's not going to be out in space, like I was saying, but he's a guy that he can stand you up and he can move you. In the NFL, if you have a running back that's going to hit the hole quick, that's all you really need. And then you have guys like Trent Williams. If Alex Mack is coming back, you get him to the second level. So I think that's kind of be more of the game plan. I do agree there's going to be more outside zone, but I think they're going to really try to do more of a power kind of quick hitting inside zone just based on the personnel they have. Trent Williams is very versatile. He can do anything. Aaron Banks, I see him as more of an inside zone player. So that's just how how I see it. Our running game was, I would say, probably 60 to 70% outside zone. I see us trimming that down a little bit, maybe like 40, 50% outside zone, and then maybe 25, 30% inside zone, trying to mix it up a little bit. So we throw, the defense off balance a little bit more.
I see it the same way too. Great point.
Yep.
And yeah, I think the point like the 49ers are trying to do right now, we realize, guess what? Mostert is gone. So that really home run guy in terms of speed is not necessarily there anymore. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell ran a 4.38, but really, when you look at it, it doesn't necessarily seem like a 4.3 type of player, at least in terms of home run speed. But the 49ers have done well in diversifying their running back room this offseason. Tyrion Davis-Price is planning to play around 222 pounds, 225 pounds this season. He said it at the rookie minicamp. I think Elijah Mitchell is trying to get up to around 215. So now you've got 2 bruisers in a way that complement Trey Sermon, who I think is about 197, 200, somewhere around there. So you've got a wide variety of different running backs in terms of playing weight, which means you hope that some guys can offer different things, especially now that we're trying to diversify our room with pass catching backs, since Anthony Lynn is our new running backs coach. And you know that Anthony Lynn loves to get that pass catching element out of his running backs. We saw it last year with DeAndre Swift, a guy who was a premier runner back in his rookie season. In his sophomore year, DeAndre Swift comes out and is one of the highest pass catching backs in the entirety of the NFL. Back in Los Angeles with the Chargers, Austin Eckler, obviously one of the more premier pass catching backs. And then Melvin Gordon even had that bit of an element to him, where you saw the two-way game where you had a little bit of a diverse running back group over there as well. So I like the different kind of group that the 49ers are trying to put out there. And it'll be interesting to see who sticks, right? Because currently we have kind of 5 guys in that room. We normally carry 4 running backs alongside the fullback and Kyle Juszczyk. So I'm definitely interested to see who beats out who in training camp. And before I continue, we've got Jamal in the building. Thank you for tuning in, Jamal.
What up, Jamal?
Jamal.
What's up, Jamal?
One of the best over here as well. One of the most supportive guys. Be sure to check out his channel. He is definitely starting up something new, so be sure to check that out. But guys, going back to the schedule real quick, there are I know one of you guys alluded to it earlier, but there are always these games in a way that we call trap games, right, in the year. I remember back in 2019, the 49ers lost to a 4-9 Atlanta Falcons team. That was our trap game late in the year. And so I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think could be the trap game kind of this season for the 49ers?
Glances at my schedule. You hit us with a curveball on that one.
I think for me, it might be the Commanders game because Carson Wentz has come to Levi's the last 2 years and pardon my French, but kicked their ass, frankly. So he's performed well against us. Our roster has changed over the last couple of years, but he's done well against us. And if you look at their offense, I mean, it's pretty good. They've got 3 weapons. They have obviously Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and then they added a very formidable slot guy, Jahan Dotson, who I was very high on in the draft. People think that it was a reach at 16. I saw him going in the mid-20s, so not too much of a reach, but he's a very fluid route runner. He's got the speed, and so they've got a 3-headed monster at wide receiver, and they have been drafting defensive line, kind of like the 49ers did over the last few years as well. So again, I mean, a team that has a very deep defensive line and has weapons is always going to be a problem. I don't think the Commanders are going to make the playoffs by any stretch. I don't think they're going to be 4-9 like the Atlanta Falcons were. They may be around 500, maybe 1 or 2 games under 500. But that is a game, and I saw somebody said it earlier in the comments that this could be a game that is more difficult than we expect. just because of who they are on defense, and they have a pretty formidable offense with weapons around Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I look at the game against Miami, and you can say it's just because McDaniel used to be on our staff, and that he knows Kyle better than anybody. You could say that, but I mean, I look at the speed on that team, and I look at our offense. We didn't need Jimmy to be a world beater to win games. And the reality is Tua, while Tua may not have the strongest arm, he can get the ball to the intermediate. He's very accurate. And if he can stay healthy, with the speed on the wide receiver on that team, and McDaniel knowing Kyle's tendencies, it's always a catch game. It's just ripe for upset. Like, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. I hate the Raiders extremely, dude. I mean, more than anybody, their content creator out there. But I will say this. We're playing the Raiders, obviously, in Las Vegas, out of all places, obviously. And it's hey, it's New Year's, it's New Year's Day. I mean, hey, you're in Vegas, you're partying. I don't, this team may lose its focus, or certain players may lose their focus, and it could be detrimental to the team. People, may take this game lightly and say, "Oh, it's the Raiders," and we still don't know how. Heck, they do have Devontae Adams. Obviously, he's not going to have, Aaron Rodgers throwing to him, but Derek Carr was his college team, college QB. So, yeah, I hate to say it, but the Raiders could be a trap game.
I will say one more thing about it, and Kevin is going to agree with me, I know, on this, is that the spaces are going to be unbearable if the 49ers lose to Miami. Like, it is going to be unbearable being on Twitter Spaces if that happens.
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
I haven't. So you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that you go on those other NFL Spaces, and I don't really go on there, so I haven't really dealt with these Dolphins fans. But
oh my God,
just growing up, I knew two of them, and they're both really annoying. So that's good enough.
All I'm going to say is this is a live show. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But I saw a Dolphins fan post on their Twitter that they were going 15-2. So if you have
let them think that.
So you're right. There's going to be an all-out war between the Dolphins fans and the 49ers fans that week.
That week on Twitter is going to be.
I mentioned this.
Brutal. It's going to be brutal.
I mentioned this on 49ers First Takes yesterday. Rohan was there with me, with Sunil and I, and Aaron, awesome guy for 49ers First Takes. But the bright side is, to me, is this: why I have optimism for the Miami game is just a simple fact that Kyle owns his students for the most part. I know we lost the NFC Championship game, but for the most part, Kyle has a pretty good track record coaching against his students. LaFleur is another guy, so we'll see, man. Hopefully, we beat Miami.
True.
And if there are any Dolphins fans in the chat, okay, Mike McDaniel has never called an offensive play, so stop it, please.
They swear that he did it all and that Kyle didn't do anything. So it's crazy. Anyway,
we have an interesting take here from Chris. He says the trap game could be the week one against the Bears because obviously Justin Fields a mobile quarterback. Trey's first game, and it's a sneaky one. And obviously that one would have us all upset given how I said the Bears could be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. And I mean, I can get this point because last year the 49ers played the Bears, obviously a better team. They put up 22 points. We won 30-22, and that was a game where Jimmy Garoppolo actually played pretty well, but Deebo Samuel obviously brought us back with that 83-yard screen pass touchdown in that game. And so, yeah, I mean, the 49ers have sometimes struggled with these mobile quarterbacks. They've struggled at times with Kyler Murray. They've struggled a little bit with Justin Fields. He was running all over us, making pretty cool plays last year. And so that could be a game to watch. I'm going to go with a one that I know 49er fans would definitely hate if we lost this game, and that's going to be Week 15 at Seattle. And I'll say why. The 49ers traveled to Seattle in Week 15 on a short week, coming off a loss to the Buccaneers, which will likely be a big battle for the 49ers. Again, their bye week was Week 9, so it'll be kind of in the middle of the bye week to the end of the year. Obviously, coming off a short week, the Seattle Seahawks host a game in I believe, week 14. So they host a game. So they're not necessarily moving anywhere while the 49ers are moving from home to Seattle. So Seattle will be a little more comfortable with their own arena. It's a division game as well. And I think it's one that the 49ers might just be feeling a bit of fatigue in a way. And obviously you expect them to win the game. That's why I'm considering it a trap game. But I wouldn't be surprised, especially because there's that one game normally towards the end of the season that the 49ers somewhat falter. Last year was the exception. We went obviously on a pretty big win streak. But in 2019, we lost to the Falcons, as I alluded to earlier, I believe in week 15 as well, or maybe it probably was a little earlier, maybe week 13. But this is a game where I can where I can see at least it could come down to a bit of coaching, obviously with the disparity between the two teams. Also, it could come down to the travel, given it's a Thursday night game, short week, coming off a pretty tough
Oh,
game.
that one's Thursday night game. You're right. Yeah.
DK always balls out against us, right?
Who do the Seahawks play before us? Week 14.
Let me remember off the top of my head. I know it's at home. It could be Houston, but let me remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Because that may also be a factor. If they're going to have a difficult game, then they'll probably be a little beat up too. But if it's, I mean, I don't want to say it's just the Texans, but I mean, any team is tough. But that does.
They play Carolina. They play Carolina at home in week 14.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a little bit of an easier kind of schedule game in a way. They also have the bye week in week 11. I know it's not that big of a deal. They have 1 week extra, so they should be a little bit more well rested coming to this point of the season. Obviously, a much worse team, but I could see why it's a trap game.
Real quick, who starts for the Seahawks? Geno Smith, Drew Lock, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Garoppolo.
Wait. Why did I see that today somewhere on YouTube?
I've been saying that for weeks now.
Jimmy Garoppolo to the Seahawks, man. Is there something that I don't know?
I think they're going to be forced to release him. I don't think anybody's going to want him, and then they're just going to snatch him up, telling them that he's going to start, and then they're not going to start him, and they're just going to use his intel.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we were kind of speculating that the 49ers are going to be putting. I think I had this talk with Rohan, and how the 49ers are going to, basically, if they do have to trade him, if they do have a partner, but the 49ers may have to eat up his salary, a part of Jimmy's salary, to make the trade more enticing. At the end of the day, it might make more sense to just cut the guy if you're going to have to eat up a certain portion of his salary. So, yeah, and everybody was saying like, "Oh, watch him go to the Seahawks and take our plays." But so hopefully Shanahan has that in mind. I'm pretty sure he does.
They always love our players. They always love.
Oh yeah,
our players.
they always
DJ
pick up our
Reed,
trash. They always pick up our
Witherspoon,
trash.
whoever. What's his name? Hyder.
Yeah.
Anybody that got cut by us is probably going to end up on Seahawks.
I remember they picked up Cantuan Balmer out of all people. Remember that?
Oh.
Yeah.
Imagine the Seahawks though getting Jimmy Garoppolo and then beating us at home in week 15. That would be
he wins.
Once
games,
again, the spaces would be unbearable.
Yeah.
Let's just not go there.
Ooh, that would be tough. All right.
Yeah.
To kind of end the game, or not game, end the kind of like our roundtable today, I want everyone to kind of shout out, even if it's the tough game, I want everyone to shout out kind of their favorite game that they're looking forward to on the schedule for 2022.
Favorite game. Nice one. And before I tell you my favorite game, I just wanted to shout out this comment by Fable JVC. It was about Jimmy. I think you could pick that one up, Rohan. Do you see that one?
This one?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but my favorite game, you got me thinking on this one. I'm glad to get this good. Mine was the Raider game. I just hate the fact that they put it on New Year's Eve weekend, and I'm bummed out because all the prices are going to be sky high. But just a favorite game from a pure football standpoint. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm scratching my head like, which one is it? That's a great question, by the way. That's an awesome question. Favorite game.
And while you
you know what? I haven't came up with one yet. I'm still scratching my head on this one.
I'm going to go with Denver.
Else is next?
I'm going to go with the Denver game.
I was going to say Denver. Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Denver game because, I mean, it is what it is. It's going to be, let's see if it was the kryptonite for us was actually Russ or was it Seattle? So that's the way I'm looking at the game. And I think that Denver is going to be a really good team this year. I mean, they were literally a quarterback away. So let's see if Russ is as it's as bad of a downturn as everybody's making it out to be, or is he going to benefit from going to just a stacked roster? I think they have a stacked roster.
I agree. And I think that game it's obviously the 49ers' real first test. And it would be a little bit of a confidence blow if they lose one of those first two games and then have to head to Denver facing that big of a team who likely will, I think they have a pretty, somewhat of a tough schedule with the first 2 weeks as well. Not tough, somewhat of an easy schedule the first 2 weeks as well. So we expect both teams to be 2-0 heading into this point. In Denver, obviously the Mile High, it'll be a tough environment in a way. And I think that this is the 49ers' big test. And obviously it will be a kind of like a make or break game in a way early because the 49ers play the Rams for the first time the week after that in Levi Stadium. So I think that will be a pretty fun game to watch for sure. Real quick, we've got Niner by Nature in the chat. Thank you for tuning in. You see what he says. Deebo that like button, Sack that like button, Will Smith that like button, everything, man. Be sure to hit that like button. Thank you guys for tuning in, chat. And Bash, you got an idea now?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm looking at it. It's going to be Trey Lance versus Kyler Murray in Mexico. Last time we played there, it was 103,467 fans in attendance at Estadio Azteca Stadium. There's a huge 49er fan base in Mexico itself. I'm not talking about the Mexicans that live in America that are Niner fans. I'm talking about the ones living in Mexico. So I'm pretty pumped. We're on an international stage in that game, and I'm pretty pumped up for that. Hope we blow them out. Why not?
There are a lot of games that I like on here. I mean, if you think about our history, right? We're playing four teams that we played in past Super Bowls, right? We're playing the Chiefs, we're playing the Chargers, we're playing the Dolphins, and then we're playing the Broncos as well. So I mean, any one of those games, we have those rivalries. We can talk about, we beat you in the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs can say, we beat you in 2019. I think for me, it's gonna probably be I think it's a tie between the Chiefs and the Bucs. When we were in the playoffs last year, I was tweeting that I wanted Brady in the NFC Championship game, specifically because Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be starting, and him against Brady would have been awesome. But to see what the young kid has against, most likely going to be the greatest quarterback to ever play the game once he officially retires, I think seeing what Trey can do against him. I know seeing what Trey can do against Pat Mahomes would be exciting as well, but just the guy with his experience in the pedigree and winning 7 rings, I think for me, especially with the game being at home, I say being sold out and seeing what Trey can do against Tom Brady would that be my favorite game of the year.
Especially after all those Tom Brady 49er rumors over the last 2 hours.
Oh yeah. Oh, those never ended.
That was unbearable too.
Yeah. Jamal's got a pretty interesting point here. Curious to see where we're in the playoff race by week 15. Seahawks likely will not be in the race at the time. The Raider game, though, week 17, both teams likely fighting for a playoff spot at that point. Probably the Raiders fighting for a wild card. And so that might be a very interesting game to see. Can the 49ers pull that one off? Obviously, going into Las Vegas, huge stadium, huge environment there. And probably one of the most important games of the entire year. So it'll be interesting to see where both of these two teams are there in week 17.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's when you get to that later part of the season, I think especially just because I think our division is, it's still us and the Rams, but at the reality is I feel like it's still a tough division. And then the fact that we got to go up against the AFC West it's gonna be down. I really have a feeling it's gonna go down to the wire. I'm supremely confident in Lance. At the same time, it's a lot of tough games on paper, but the X factor is always that we don't know who's going to be injured by that time. There's going to be tons of injuries, even going into training camp. We don't really know about any of these teams until those preseason games started, and even then, really not until the regular season starts. So, because there's always a couple of teams that surprise everybody, and all of a sudden they go from 0 to good. So
true, 0 to hero.
Yep.
Do you guys want to answer this question in the chat? It says, given the schedule, how many wins do you guys see we
here? Kevin, what do you think?
Looking through the schedule earlier today, I think we go 12-5. If Trey is everything that we expect him to be, again, he doesn't have to be an All-Pro his first year. If he's a little bit better than Jimmy, if he's 2 games better than Jimmy, we're gonna go 12-5, right? So I fully expect the 49ers to run the football a lot this year. Trey's we've seen how he can be efficient in the short kind of streak that we've seen him play the 10 quarters. He was very efficient in the second half of the Texans game. If he just continues that, and we run the football effectively, I see us going 12-5.
Yeah, I see 11-6. That's the way I'm counting it. I just really feel like we're gonna lose a game that we didn't think that we were gonna lose, and then I think that we're going to win a couple of games that nobody thought that we could win. Because everybody always puts the Niners on the back burner. We're always the underdog again in the national media until we're not, until we're undeniable. So I just look at it as 11-6, and then we go into the playoffs. I still think we make the playoffs, and that I think that it'll be interesting to see Trey's first foray into the playoffs.
Yeah. So yesterday I said 12-5. I'm going to stick with it, but every now and then somebody may get hurt or something. So if 11-6 happened, it wouldn't shock me. And then again, those weird, crazy trap games, of course, that everybody hates. But yeah, I'm very hopeful about this season in general, though. We're finally going to get to see Trey Lance, crossing my fingers, unless something wild happens. And obviously the weapons that we have, Danny Gray in the mix with Deebo, assuming we're going to have Deebo, it looks like it. Ayuk, who I love and who's been working out with Trey Lance, obviously Kittle. The running back stable is huge. So just patch that offensive lineup and get it going and get it to gel sooner than expected. I see us being an insane offense, and now Bosa might have a premier pass rusher on the opposite side of him. Who knows? So we'll see. I have a lot of good hopes for the season, though.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing before we keep going? I wanted to say that there are a lot of great factors going for us, right? D'Amico Ryans is going to be in his second season as a play caller. We're deeper on the defense, right? And now Kyle Shanahan has, somewhat of an idea how to call games for Trey, right? We saw that even in the first half of the Texans game and the Cardinals game, wasn't really a great game plan until Trey really settled in, right? So we saw the play action boot game. We saw throws down the field. We saw him throwing outside the numbers. We saw inside, which I think is going to be a huge portion of this running the running offense. So I think the biggest thing is Kyle Shanahan being more comfortable with Trey, D'Amico Ryan's experience, and I think the team's experience as a whole, because frankly, they've had a lot of games. Like, they kind of blew the NFC Championship game last year, so they're all getting more mature. They're getting better, and I think that even throughout the season, even though the playoffs doesn't happen until the end, I think this team is much more experienced to where they can avoid the mistakes that they had going into last year, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
No, I agree.
Those are all great points. Yeah, definitely. And before we tune off for the night, I wanted to say thank you to everyone in the chat for buzzing through. This was a great show, great roundtable, and I really enjoy having these discussions with some very, very well-knowledge individuals over here. So before we go, I wanted to let all of you three be sure to shout out all of your social media again, so that people can go ahead, hit you guys with a follow. And if you guys want to make sure you don't get it wrong, be sure to check out the chat. All of their links are in the description as well.
I'll go first. It's actually simulcasting on my channel right now, but for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, it's you can follow me at 49er Minded on Twitter, at 49er Minded on Instagram, and there's a 49er Minded Facebook page. I have all kinds of cool, awesome guests. Rohan was one of them. Had Larry Krueger, and it's been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, like I just like you were saying, Rohan, I wanted to thank you for having us all on. I had a great time talking. This is the first time I've actually seen Kevin in person. But I've had Bashar on my show, and I've talked to you many times in the spaces. I've talked to Rohan in the spaces, and I just really enjoyed myself today talking the schedule with you guys. But once again, you guys can catch me on @PeterLucas8 on Twitter. I'm on there pretty much every day, and in the spaces pretty much Monday through Friday. The weekends I spend for my kids. So, then also you can catch my podcast, the Niner Fanatic Podcast, on YouTube. I do put it live on Twitter. I do put it live on Facebook, And then it's also the audio version is on Spotify, Apple Pod, Google Pod, and Anchor. So thank you guys for having me.
Hey, somebody's asking for your autograph, Kevin.
God, all this love, guys. This is great. I don't have a podcast. I've had several people say, "Hey, you need to start one," just because I tend to be a little bit more critical of the team and the teams that I root for. Maybe I'll think about it. I'm pretty busy and I have an infant, but I would love to have a YouTube show. I'd love to have a podcast. I love football just as much as the next guy. I love sports just as much as the next guy. So that's something definitely I'll work on. I may need a little advice on how to get that started, so I'll be reaching out to you guys if I do start that. But yeah, I want to thank Rohan and the guys for having me on. It's been a ton of fun. This won't be the last you see or hear from me. So my Twitter handle is at SF99er49 on Twitter.
Kevin is very right. This is definitely not the last time you are going to hear him. That boy is a loud mouth.
This isn't the Kevin that I'm familiar with, though. I got to be honest about that.
Yeah. Nah, but Kevin.
It's passionate.
Kevin
Passionate is the word.
Passionate. There we go. But Kevin's the best. Everybody loves him over here. And Thank you three for definitely coming on. Great evening show over here. And we'll catch you guys next time. I will probably be going live sometime this weekend again, talking some 49ers, and then recapping the rookie minicamp next week. Thank you guys. And